Welcome to Leadapreneur. Hello and welcome to the Leadapreneur podcast. I'm delighted to introduce today Mr. Darren Lo, a well-known HR leader here in Malaysia. He's a well-recognized LinkedIn influencer, just crossing the 28,000 followers mark. Congratulations.
Thank you, everyone.
He's also written a book, which we have here, Excel for HR. As we all know, Excel is the foundation of modern civilization. And we're also going to be talking about the HR lifecycle in the age of AI. So, Darren, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you on board, right? So here we go into this afternoon of conversation and discussion. And I think, first of all, I'd like to ask you, what drives a man to write a book about Excel?
So the main theme about this book, it's really about encouraging more data-driven decision-making.
Yes.
It's like in the workplace, a lot of times when we make decisions, we can't really just plug from the sky like, hey, I fail, I think, right? So of course, you can have intuition. A lot of times leaders with experience do make decisions based on intuition. However, data would help to support that, to back that up, especially when you work for bigger organizations or especially dealing with tough stakeholders. Yeah, so that's the main reason. And this book is also written in the basis of the whole HR lifecycle, from recruitment, onboarding, productivity, performance, all the way. So, yep, it's good for everyone.
Give it a go. Well, I think one of the things that stands out to me is, so my passion, one of my passions in life is rugby. And in the age of rugby today, it's not well known, but all rugby players basically have a little computer in their shirts. Mm-hmm. So it's like what you have on your phone. You have accelerometers, you have a GPS chip. And so the teams have real life data. But when you're at training, when you're in the game, they can see everything.
Right.
At an individualized level. And what I often find is we don't have anything like that for talent. Mm-hmm. Right? I know you work with a large organization. Lots of people work with large organizations. They've got lots of talent, but a lot of talent, it doesn't have data about it, right?
Very true.
It just doesn't exist. And so it's led to a bit of a lack of an awareness of the power of data and the mindset and the realization of just how powerful it can be, right?
Totally. I mean, now that you mentioned about sports rugby, right? I mean, I'm a football fan, right? I support Arsenal, right? In case of any Arsenal fan there. So I just want to share, like, in terms of sports science, right? Today, all these sports science folks in the team, in the professional team especially, they would actually analyze how many passes you make, at what point you actually distribution, etc. So those are all data for them to actually improve the players. So if they are using it to improve the performance of the players, why aren't you using data for your team?
Yeah, right. And it's no small thing, right? This approach to data is what leads to winning teams.
Right.
It's not an incremental improvement. It seems to be really quite substantial, maybe even a so-called game changer. Right. So do you see that as a critical element going forward into this age of AI, Industry 4.0, digitalization? Don't we need to have a data-driven approach to talent? Isn't that essential?
Yeah, totally. I guess we don't know what we don't know. So sometimes if we don't slice and dice on the data that we have, or that is somewhere in the organization, then we are probably quite clueless, or probably we are not, fixing the right place or the right spot.
And what always fascinates me, though, is that moment of passion. You put a lot of time and effort and love into creating something like this. What drove you to wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm going to do this. I am going to write this book.
So there's a story about it.
Yes.
So I actually wrote this book with Ty, right? Ty is an Excel guru. So what happens was, again, I'm on LinkedIn, right? So one day Ty made a post to say that, hey, I'm going to give 30 minutes free coaching, Excel coaching. I was like, oh, free, right? Malaysians love free things. Anyway, I just wanted to test out whether, he's really good. So I had to spend 30 minutes with him. He answered all my Excel questions, taught me a few tricks, formulas, shortcuts, and he managed to create a simple dashboard for me. I thought, okay, this guy is no fluff. So a few months later, he actually published his first book called Rock Your Data, which I supported him to get a copy, actually quite several. And then after that, he asked me out, to catch up over breakfast. Yeah, it was just coffee shop, not fancy restaurant. And then he started asking me questions, right? I mean, he's really inquisitive. So he asked me, hey, Darren, I was thinking of writing a book about HR and Excel. And then he started to ask about how is it about HR and all that. So I told him the whole HR life cycle. And then he said, he commented, oh, you're so knowledgeable in this. And then I wanted to rush for the next appointment. And then he said, hey, I got more questions. And I was like, because I'm a bit agey, because I need to rush. So I said, okay, if you have more questions, how about we just rack it together? And the rest, they say, is history.
So key elements, the word free, the word coffee, food coming together, maybe like a mamak store, critical elements in the journey of building this?
I think it's really about give first. It's networking. It's about giving first, right? I mean,
Yes.
Ty being generous, he gave first. It's a bit about like paying it forward.
Yes.
So yeah. So I also practice that today. I mean, yeah, it's not always about money.
Beautiful concept, paying forward, right? That's a really, I think, something very heartwarming. And I believe that you want to give something to us, which is you want to help us understand more about the HR lifecycle.
Right.
We're going to be looking at what it means to attract talent, how to acquire talent, develop talent, retain talent, and then even talking about the difficult word of exiting talent. But you've got a really interesting twist on that with the word rebounding, which we'll weave into. And this is really going to be shared in the context of the time in which we're in, which is the beginning of the age of AI. And of course, we know that there's a rate of technologization, and that's becoming more important. But it's also going to become very clear that talent becomes just as important, if not more important. And that's why looking at it from a strategic perspective, a data-driven HR professional, an HR leader like Darren, I'm quite excited to hear what you can share with us. So let's kick off at the beginning there. Why don't you introduce us to the idea of the HR lifecycle and what that's all about?
Okay, so I'm also very excited to share. So for those who don't know about HR lifecycle, so basically you can imagine a process flow, right? So then you're going to imagine from the very beginning, from the onset, in terms of talent, right? So how do people want to join you? First, they must know you, right? Know your company exists. What do you do? Do they have the confidence, and what attracts you? So we call it talent attraction. Then, of course, you have talent acquisition, right? Or more layman term, recruitment, right? You recruit them to work for you, to do a job, achieve a goal, solve a problem. Right. Thereafter, you have that part where you onboard the person, right? The first day experience, first 90 days, there are books about it, right? It's very important, the first impression, right? I mean, if you have a bad first day on the company, probably, you might feel uncomfortable thereafter, right? So thereafter, a couple of months, a few years down the road, you want development. Everybody wants to learn, especially the young people, right? They're hungry to learn. So do we provide that in organization? Those are the development bit. And then we talk about retention, right? Different people have different motivation. So we're going to know how to tackle that, right? Not everyone everybody wants more money, okay? I believe most people want more money. Then again, that may not be the number one thing they want, right? So that is what we need to figure out. And last but not least, like what Jan said, a lot of times, probably a lot of organizations I have witnessed is that they probably don't really exit employee that well, right? When we say exit, there are probably better ways to do it. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
What I like about this is a very clear, structured framework that I think is practical, that's powerful. And so what we're going to do is going to dive into it now. And the first thing we're looking at is this idea of attracting talent.
Right.
And you just made that excellent point. If people don't know about you, they can't join your company, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of attracting that talent. You want to kind of figure out your unique value proposition, right? Because you think you might be unique and special, but actually it turns out everyone is saying the same thing. Right. And maybe that's not even necessarily what's relevant. Right. Just because someone's paying more money doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to join that company. Maybe people are prioritizing something else. Work-life balance is popular today. Mm-hmm. Right. Maybe learning opportunities or career paths. So what do you think is really interesting for you from about attracting talent that you think a lot of professionals overlook and should spend a bit more time focusing on?
So maybe I want to give the thought that attracting talent is like HR embracing the marketing front, right? You're gonna market your company, right? Of course, it's easy. You want to market Google, Facebook, Meta. Everybody wants to join them. But what if you are an ordinary company, right? So you're gonna think of how to do it. So I think it's important that HR today go on socials, right? Because people are just not attracted to what they see on newspaper or website. If you go to a company website, do you really believe everything they write there? Okay, I mean, with due respect, right? Okay, yeah, let's be real, right?
What are you saying? Oops. Not everything on the internet is true?
Well, we're gonna discern, right? A lot of scammers out there. Then again, right? Yeah. However, if you start engaging the people in there, right? Of course, you have Glassdoor, right? Where people tell you real stories, their experience in the organization, or you can follow some of their leaders, right? Then you know whether they are real. So those are some of the ways, I would say, in the world today, right? Where people really connect and feel attracted to join a certain company.
And what do you see as some of the mistakes that are happening in this first category of acquiring talent?
The way I look at it is, I think Malaysia, we today, again, based on what I see, we are still very much relying on job portal, right? Of course, Job Street started in Malaysia in the 90s, right? Then, of course, now people go on LinkedIn. We have other job portals, right? Just to share a few, in case anyone's looking out for a job, you can go to Indeed. You can go to even our government organization, right? We also have some of these portals that can actually help people, right? My Future Jobs, they call it, right? To help people to look for a job. So job portals okay. So maybe what I can share is the user experience, right? Again, like I say, we are marketers, right? HR turned marketers. We gotta have that skill nowadays. So imagine you are the job applicant, right? I'm a job applicant as well, right? So what is my experience using a job portal? I saw the ad. I'm really interested. I like the company because I follow, Jan, the leader. He's really impressive. So I apply, and it went to the black hole, right? And then you didn't hear from them.
Yeah.
You gotta contact them. They ghost you. Or after the interview, they ghost you. I mean, we are guilty for that. Honestly, yep, I'm also guilty for that. Yep. Anyway, so the point is, yeah. So why socials are more effective these days? Because it works two ways, right? You can straight away reach out to me, right? You can just message me on LinkedIn, right? So, and I can actually interact with you directly, so you don't have to go through the system. So it's both ways. So that is something that is changing the world today.
Right, that ability to directly cross the threshold if you're really passionate.
Yeah, if I admire Jan and want to join his company, I will write straight to him, right?
Yeah. Well, exactly, right? Exactly. And so do you think there's any examples in Malaysia that you can share of someone who's doing this well? Or someone that, or maybe, I don't know if you want to say who isn't doing it well, maybe that would be a bit too naughty, but who do you think is doing well that you think stands out around this?
I think in Malaysia, I mean, based on what I observe, all right, maybe let me just give you a context, right? So I've been privileged to learn how to use LinkedIn in my first job, right? When I was with a HR and recruitment company called Kelly Services. So yeah, we learned how to headhunt. That time, LinkedIn was still rather dry. People just go there for job opportunities. So we are there for talent, to hunt talent. So then again, what I want to share is that over the years, of course, most of the time, some of the selected few HR leaders who put themselves out there. Yeah. Then again, it's not easy because HR it's a job that a lot of times are in the back office in a support function. People normally put their sales people or the CEO up front, the marketers, also HR. And yeah, true enough, there are people who say, yeah, why is HR so active on LinkedIn? Right? Like, don't they have other better things to do? But you think about it, we are there to get talent for you. Otherwise, come on end, you're going to ask us, hey, where's my resources? Nobody's going to do the job. Yeah.
Excellent point. Challenging also that idea of what HR even is, right? If that's the right thing to do, jump out there and be on social media, build that.
Right.
So how would you then differentiate? We got that first step, attracting talent. Mm-hmm. Now we're looking at this idea of talent acquisition. Mm-hmm. Help us first understand how do you differentiate attraction versus acquisition?
Attraction, it's the unique selling point part, the USP, which you mentioned. In the HR world, we call it EVP, which stands for Employer Value Proposition. What can you get? Right? It's like if you join this company, the benefits is really good. We cover everyone in family, medical, whatnot. Right? So those are some on the career prospect. Everyone can grow in 2-3 years, that kind of thing. Yeah. Nice office, open space. You can work from home, hybrid, right? That most people like these days. So those are probably some of the attraction parts. So because before you can acquire them, you recruit them, first I must express interest, right? It's just like what headhunters or search firm do, right? It's like if Jan is too busy working, he's a performer, he got no time to go to JobStreet to apply for a job. Yes. Until Darren approached Jan from LinkedIn and said, hey, Jan, how are you doing? I look at your profile. You're very impressive. We got a role that we want to talk to you about. And Jan said, okay, I'll give you 5 minutes. Yeah. And I'm going to start sending a company. Oh, have you heard of so-and-so? Oh, no. Okay, maybe I'll share with you. So on and so forth. That is the acquisition part, right? So somebody has to do the work. Yeah. I mean, that is for passive candidate, of course. But for the active candidate, in order to attract them to click the button to apply. So that is about the attraction bit. The recruitment bit, of course, is not just about them applying. Then, of course, the recruiters, right? I mean, just to share why sometimes we had no choice but to ghost you is really we don't have enough time. Some advertisement, we have maybe 2,000 applicants. We can't be looking through everyone. So yeah, anyway. So we have
2,000 applicants. Darren, are you serious? How on earth do you process 2,000? Do you have 2,000 emails in your inbox? I don't even know what that looks like.
So you go to a job portal, then you see 2,000 applicants. That's like,
And
right?
like, oh,
yeah. So I can't exactly tell you how we do it because it's a trade secret. Otherwise, the HR folks might stone me. Nah, I'm just kidding. So of course, what we do is we got to filter, we're gonna screen, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we're gonna shortlist it down to maybe 10. Right. From the 10, we probably send the top 3 to 5 to the hiring manager, right?
How are you even filtering? Is that something you can talk about, or is that also a trade secret? Or
okay, maybe I can just generally share. I mean, a lot of times, of course, right? We're talking about technology.
Yes.
There's also what we call an applicant tracking system, right? ATS, right? Of course, there are all these HR system out there. And with AI, right? I'm sure there are systems out there which can help you to filter. Look, resume is words, right? Of course, if you choose to put your photo there, that's a photo, right? Yeah. So essentially, the system is filtering words. So it's filtering keywords. All right. So yeah. So I've given you the hint. Go figure it out.
It's like a modern day magic. If you say the right words, the spell will unlock the
True enough. So it's all about how you're going to increase your chance, your opportunity to move from the 2,000, the applicant bucket, into the screening bucket, right?
Right.
And thereafter to the shortlist for interview bucket.
Right.
And from the final interview, say for example, Jan is hiring. So probably, from the 5 resume I sent to him, he interviewed 3. And of course, we will rank the 3 who's the top choice, second choice, and we'll make the offer and see if it works.
How do you know it's real and not just a bunch of BS, what people are writing? At what point do you, I think this is something we've certainly experienced at times, and I think everyone does, right? Where it's easy to write a lot of nice things, right? And how do you, try and touch something that's real versus, this is not real, this is not real?
This is a really interesting question, right? I mean, we talk about AI and all that. So here's the challenge to recruiters today. I mean, sometimes I'm not sure if I can trust the cover letter, If anyone still write the cover letter, sometimes I'm not sure whether it's written by ChatGPT or by the person himself, right? So anyway, if you still write cover letter, try not to AI it too much or, put in your own flavor, right?
Yes.
Otherwise, it's quite hard to connect. But then again, how to really test is really through the conversation, through the interview. But of course, I would also recommend, instead of just behavioral interview, asking questions, situations, all that, I always suggest to put people through some tests, right? Whether it's, if it's technical role, of course, you can do a technical test, right? If it's a database job, data engineer, of course, you can, ask the person to perform certain things, right? Extract certain data, perform certain tasks, and we'll see whether the person know how to code. And if your job involves writing, give them a pen and paper right on the spot. Then you know whether they can really write. Just giving you some idea. So, that's how I would do it, right? If it's a marketing job, give a person a short-term assignment. Not one that you need to work overnight, but maybe on the spot. Just present something, 5 minutes, right? Not selling a pen again. We gotta be a bit more creative, yeah?
Okay, buy this pen. Why? So you can write your letter. Maybe I was almost thinking, I was thinking that maybe people write on the piece of paper and then scan it old school style and then email it so that they can show it's human, right?
Why not the overnight thing is that, there are 2 reasons for it. One is, to be fair to the candidate, we don't want to take up too much of the time and effort, right? Yes. I think it's not fair, right? And of course, there are people who say that, whether the company is using the idea and implement it. That's why there's also another thing that HR have to be very careful about, that we are not really doing that. But number 2 is if we're going to give you a homework overnight, honestly, we don't know whether you're going to get AI or get your family members to help you out with. So we're going to test you on the spot. That's the best way, right? Even with virtual interviews, I don't know, we do experience candidate who's probably seems to be reading something. I don't know. Again, I'm going to give them a benefit of doubt, but...
So my friend suggested a ridiculous idea that I want to ask you, how ridiculous is this? Mm-hmm. What is the risk that you get a fantastic cover letter, they jump through all the buckets, you hire this person, they're working remotely, they do great work, but after 1 year, it turns out they were an AI the whole time? Is this ridiculous? Is this something that could actually happen? Where do we stand on this kind of this idea? Is this absolutely absurd? Is it probably already happened somewhere? Because you could be running an AI farm, right, where you put 10,000 applications through, 100 people get it. You're working
Okay, so first of all, I think ethically is wrong.
Yes, yes.
However, whether it's possible, maybe in the future, we gonna, because again, you're talking about producing work, right? Of course,
Yes.
the AI or the person got the job done. However, right, we need to understand that working in a company, in an organization, no matter how big or small, you need to communicate, right? So how do AI communicate, right? So that's the part where, I mean, I don't know if anyone would spend so much time and effort to program the AI to speak and sound like the person even, right? Imagine if I'm the guy who got a job, the AI who got a job, and Jan called me and I speak that way, right? And respond instantaneously, right? I'm not sure we have gone so far yet, but maybe one day, yeah. Then, of course, you don't need human anymore. It will be humanoid.
Well, that then takes us maybe to the third point that you were talking about. So we've looked at attracting talent. We've talked about acquiring talent. What about developing talent, right? And developing talent in this age of AI, and of course, the big thing that on everyone's mind is being replaced by AI or not. So let's sort of open the conversation here on this critical topic of developing talent.
Okay, so I'm a believer of lifelong learning, right? Because they say change is the only constant, right? So let me just give you a context, right? I'm a Gen Y, so I grew up with floppy disks to CD to USB, and now you have cloud, right? I grew up with 56 kilobytes modem, which you had to dial up. Right, today you have Wi-Fi and whatnot. So I have personally seen the technology advance and experienced it myself. So all I can assure everyone is, do not panic, do not fear. While the world is changing very quickly, however, right, it doesn't mean everything will turn AI in the blink of an eye, right? So what we are want to encourage is be open-minded, have the growth mindset, but just don't have this fear of missing out too much kind of thing. But embrace it, learn it. So this has to be a bit on HR, what do you call that? Jargons a little bit, right? So we have this KSA in HR, right? So K stands for knowledge, right? You have the knowledge for the job, right? Probably you go to university, got a bachelor degree, all right? So I read HR, so I got a competitive advantage to know more about labor law, performance appraisal, whatnot. But having the knowledge does not mean that you know how to apply it, right? Then you talk about skills, right? Okay, so even skills is like Excel skill. Then today we have new skill. So we started with attracting talent on LinkedIn, right? Like me. Content creation is a skill. Writing is a skill, right? Of course, writing with AI is also a skill, because why? You need prompt engineering skill. You need to know how to write prompt, so that it doesn't sound so robotic. You can refine it, that kind of thing. And things are keep on evolving. Every day you're going to learn new feature, because the developer of the system or the AI software is going to improve it every day. You can't just be stagnant. Even Excel today is connected to the internet. It's 365. It's on cloud. And it has a lot of more plugins, connections than ever before. Honestly, a lot of things happening, even I couldn't catch up with it. So development is really about, eventually, I think besides the skills, the knowledge, right? And also the attitude, right? Or abilities. I think last but not least is about competencies, right? So what is competencies? Competencies is essentially whether you're competent to do the job. Are you competent to do marketing? How do you do marketing, right? You know how to, promote the product, right? It used to be 5 Ps, but I'm not sure how many Ps right now. But yeah, so you also need to have the knowledge of the market. You need to know who are your top competitors, what's happening in the macro view, the trade war, and so on and so forth. What's the future projection, right? Your inventories like, your sales team, your production team. So many things you need to know and also apply it, right? So yeah, it takes a lot to tangle. So as HR, how do we develop people? Yep, we need to know what skills they need. Of course, we're talking about reskilling as well, right? Maybe in the past, they do this, it's no longer relevant. I'll give you an example. Maybe those days you have people who collect money, right? Go up to the shops, maybe you're in trading business, right? You go to each shop and collect money. Hey, you owe us this money, right? But maybe you can do it online. Maybe you can do it other methods. So yeah, you're going to reskill them to do that, because they no longer go out there. They're probably going to learn how to use technology. So those some of the skills. Then of course you have all the IT skills, right? The Python, the whatnot. So yeah, those are the skills. And I know a lot of people who self-learn. Of course, that's another topic for the day, right? Because learning, there's always I facilitate training. There's always a few groups of people in the training room. Once you start the training, right, guys? Let me ask you, who is really passionate to learn? Okay, maybe just 2 hands. It's Jan and Darren.
Yeah.
And then
Me.
who is not so keen here? You're sent by your boss. And then, all right, a few sent by their boss. And then a few are there to just take the day off, have a free lunch, and that's it. So again, it's forcing people to learn may not be a great idea after all. So anyway, but we still need to develop people, not just for skills, competencies, but also, of course, for their progression.
Yeah. Wow, we've opened up such a rich topic here. I'm going to dive into the first one that jumps out to my mind, which is that training room situation, right? And then at the same time, it fascinates me like how games can be so compelling. Right? So people might not find learning so interesting, but most of us enjoy a good game of some kind, right? Whether it's Solitaire or Farmville or Clash of Clans or Civilization or Diablo, whatever your flavor is, or FIFA or anything. And I've always kind of felt that I think a lot of the challenge is around creating an environment that's so engaging to people that they want to learn.
Yep.
Right. And I think part of the challenge for traditional training approaches is the generation of that environment. And I think one of my friends has got me into sort of really understanding at a much more profound level the power of gamification. Because gamification is the capacity, a game is an experience engine. You can reliably reproduce an experience, right? That's what a game can do. When you sit down for a game of chess, you reliably have a certain kind of experience that will involve strategic thinking, that will involve critical thinking, for example, right? And so since you want experiential learning for people because it's richer, you need to kind of look at gamification. And then what I've also come to understand is, wait for it, here come the big words. The datafication of talent requires gamification. Why? Because if there's no game, there's no data. The reason why the soccer players have data about them is because they're playing the game of soccer. The reason why rugby players have data about them is because they're playing the game of rugby. If you're not playing the game, there's no data.
Okay.
Doing corporate work is not a game. In the sense that you're generating meaningful data, right? Kicking a ball about in the park is not quite the same as being in a training ground and doing all this and this and this. And there's this sort of element that in order to datafy talent, which you need to generate gamification. And the gamification needs to be more, something that is relevant to the organization. How does that sound to you? What would you say is your perspective on this kind of broad theme here?
I think it makes perfect sense to infuse game into learning. I mean, in fact, I've attended training. I mean, I think we shouldn't have 100% entirely instructor-led training these days. Otherwise, it's a bit like a lecture, right? Even if you get to groups to discuss. But yeah, I have recently attended a training where, in the middle of it, we do have a game, right? Where we are trying to, infuse some of the learnings. Sometimes you might remember the game better than the trainer or what you learn. I mean, from the slides, right? I mean, slides you can read. So yeah, it's really about the experience. I think it's something about the brain, when you actually play games. I don't know, it's also about psychology. I don't know. For me, I'm a very competitive person.
Yes.
So I will start to strategize, think of how to win this, I'm going to look at things different angle. So suddenly you are lighten up compared to instructor-led training where you're just sitting there, like, your body is like, the energy level getting lower and lower. So yeah, I totally agree with gamification.
So there's something there for the audience to consider exploring that, right? As we're going into industry, for saying that more seriously, I think, and going deeper into just the trivial elements of gamification there.
Yep.
And then, so we also talked about developing talents in terms of the competencies, right? I think one of the things that we've built out as Leadapreneur is this sort of we call it like an L-shaped grid for talent, competency and care. And because you can be really competent, but if you don't care,
right,
nothing's going to happen. And it's almost if I would rather have someone who really, really cares, and she can gain competency, or build it, or access competency networks.
Yep.
Right, because that care is the fundamental driving force going forward. And so it's a bit like the 9-box grid, the classic, right? But it doesn't have a sort of a negative side to it. It's building more spread. You have like, good care, great care, really great care, right?
Yeah.
Competent, really competent. And so you're building a concept from good to great rather than bad to good talent, right? Because I think great talent today is about having high competence, but also high care.
I totally agree. So if I can just chime in, right? Let me give you what we commonly face, right? I think most of us face, I mean, as HR practitioner or as a boss of the company, you have the performer, right? I used to be that individual performer, who worked really hard, try to go for that rating 4 and 5, prove myself. I'm a high achiever, right? And then one day when because of all that and the opportunity, you get promoted to be a people manager, then that is the time where, your competencies is high, but your care, you don't know how to do that because you're always, so common mistakes. I mean, that's why we are training for first-time people manager, right? So common mistakes that we can see, or maybe even myself, at one point I experienced this, the performer refused to delegate. It's like, oh man, I'm going to pass to this person. He's so slow. He can't do these things right. So, delegation skills, organization skills, planning. So all this kind of thing. And of course, caring, right? People work for leaders who care, right? And again, if for the high competency or rather the performer who are very driven to a certain extent, they might not even check on you, like, how are you? Like, the first thing they say to you in the morning is like, hey, where's the report? Right? Of course, nobody wants to work with bosses like that, right? They're going to start connecting to, hey, how's your weekend? You go anywhere, right? Ask for the report later. So these are some skills to learn. Do they really mean bad? No, it's just because they're programmed that way. They are like a, race car. They've been racing all their life, right? Suddenly you tell them, oh man, can you just slow down a little bit and look around, check out the surroundings, enjoy the scenery? Yeah, somebody's going to tell them that. But of course, a lot of times, the performer's boss also have a role to play. They assume that, he's a performer. Jan is a performer. Don't worry, he's going to make it. You're going to help him out. So that's, I felt, is something that's missing in a lot of organizations.
The care aspect or the...
The preparing the people manager or training the people to care. Of course, caring can be a value as well, right? I'm just saying, I mean, everyone should care in terms of the culture. But I guess one example, if you want to really see care, I mean, what I mean is that a lot of times, people who don't seem to care, they're probably focusing on other things. They're focusing on results. They're focusing on pleasing the stakeholders. They forgot about the people around them. So that's why they don't appear to care or they don't care. Because I only care to hit the numbers. The boss said, going to hit 5 million. I'm going to have 5 million. What are you guys talking about? Talking about where to eat for lunch? No, skip it. Let's do this. Right? So it's really about, but then if you remember, everything rise and fall on leadership, right? So leaders are very important.
Yeah. I guess there's a critical differentiation there between leadership and management.
Right.
The way I kind of break that out is I see management as the language of the process. There's a machine that needs to be optimized for efficiency and profitability. And so you're moving parts of the machine for that. Whereas for me, the language of the mind, whereas the leader and leadership is the language of the heart. Right. So it's a really important thing to kind of comprehend that there's a fundamental difference there. And the leader speaking to the person, not the process. They're talking about people. They're talking about culture, right? We're talking about caring about each other. And, they bring it all together so that you have a why. People serve their leader, right? They don't wake up in the morning because they want to serve the process, right? They want to serve their leader. They want to serve their team, right? The other way around. A leader cares about their team and doesn't want to let them down. Right, for example. Can you give us some insight around this critical difference between leadership and management, especially maybe around promoting people and building talent pipelines?
I think the key thing about leaders have to be inspiring, in my opinion, right? This is my opinion, right? Because you are leading the herd, right? Leading the company, right? It's the reason why we call company, right? We are all there for objective. Imagine in the old days, right? Troops, right? You have the general, right? Look up to the general, right? The general doesn't just need to be competent in battle, right? But whatever the general says can make or break a war. So if you apply that same to the company, right? Because as a leader, I mean, even myself with my team, right? Whatever I say carries a lot of weight or whatever I do. And whether you realize it or not, people are watching you, right? So and of course, today, there's another word called authenticity.
Yes.
That people are really talking about. Whether you're really authentic, right? To me, being authentic is just about what you see is what you get. What you see me on LinkedIn, I wrote about. What you see in my office, outside. It's not to say, I'm going to be as playful in the office as I'm outside, but it just means that is me, right? If I have a tough conversation with you, that's the Darren having tough conversation with you. I'm not faking to be another person, right? If I'm going to play pickleball with you outside, I'm going to really have fun playing pickleball. So that kind of thing. So that is really about leader. Manager is very task goal driven. Like, all right, it's like project manager, right? Take for example, project manager are short term, right? 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. You're put on this project. Your goal is to make this work. Give us the end product. So what do? All right, guys, let's huddle. I mean, if you're laser focused on the results, you're not gonna even talk about, hey, let's buy lunch, eat pizza before we start, right? You gotta everyone drop everything you do. I want to talk about this. Let's do A, B, C, da da da. Every week you check in, have you done this? Have you done that? You know, a bit like a supervisor kind of thing. So if you ask me, that's the easiest way to explain manager and leaders.
I think that's always such a fascinating conversation, right? You're kind of looking for that difference there because it's often misunderstood. And I think there's a leap from management to leadership.
Right.
Especially there's sort of this sort of, what's it called? Like a gulf between middle management and senior leaders and making that talent leap across that bridge. I mean, that kind of takes us a little bit into that retaining talent conversation because you want to retain talent in the sense of they have good managers and maybe you want them to become good leaders, or you want single contributors to become good managers.
Yep.
I mean, that's just an introduction to the theme. What do you see really today around not just developing talent, but actually retaining talent?
So this is my take, right? So other than most of the things that most organizations do, right, that from what we can observe, which is beanbags, right? The very cool office. I mean, it's well and fine. I'm just saying, right?
You know, I'm just going to say this. Is it cool? Is it cool to have beanbags?
I don't know, maybe for 3 months.
Yeah, right. How many times do you sit in a beanbag? I'm just going to be controversial here. You know,
very little, right?
Very little, right? I just got to get this off my chest. I just got
to. Oh no, no offense to all those who have beanbags. You see it, well, yeah. But
how many times have you sat in that beanbag? Yeah, you know, really. Yeah.
Okay, so there are 2 parts to this. Maybe I'll just share the first part first, right? So I normally tell people about Maslow hierarchy of needs, right? I mean, if you read about Maslow hierarchy of needs, so you need to know what people really want. Of course, everybody wants more money and everybody seems to want promotion, right? Every year, HR, we process promotion, right? Recommendation. They're probably 10, 15, 20%, depending on your company, get promoted. Does it mean 80% going to be heartbroken and, cry and complain? No, by no means, right? I mean, promotion is not the only way to grow your career. You can move to another department laterally, to another market, another business and whatnot, or pick up a new skill, right? Pick up a project. So expand your horizon. The pie is big enough, right? We can't promote everyone, right? And promotion, yes, it's a recognition, but it doesn't mean that you work there for a really long time. We need to promote you, right? It's really about expansion of responsibility and whether you can have the potential to do it. Plus, of course, proven performance, just to be clear, right? So what I want to say about Maslow hierarchy of needs is, again, to be fair, the junior staff, most of them, again, depending on your family background, they're grinding, they want to start a family, buy a house, buy a car. It's really fulfilling the basic needs, right? And slowly you go into connection, the relationship, you start to network in the midlife, when you're a bit more settled down, you look for friends to play pickleball, right? You race cards together, that kind of thing, join networking event, right? And then after that, the pinnacle of the Maslow hierarchy of needs is self-actualization, right? That's why Simon Sinek book is all about. Find your why. So now we are talking about our whys, right? Everyone is okay. Have you found your why? Your why? So why is that very important? Because essentially, we are going to be motivated every morning waking up to know what's our why. We are not just here grinding, right? That's why the Gen Z don't like to grind, right? It's like, hey, give me my work-life balance. I'm just here to work for money. Okay, with due respect, maybe some of you are not, but I'm just saying, right? A lot of us today, we are working for just the money, right? But after that, we're going to spend the money to do our own things with our loved ones or friends, right? And in the whole process of that, to fulfill our why. So the question to the manager is, have you ever asked your staff or try to find out what do they really want? Maybe they just want to go back at 5:30. As simple as that. So stop making them work after 5:30, right? Yeah. Maybe they just want a compliment. There are people who seek recognition. I mean, if you go the personality test and whatnot, right? DISC and all that, yeah. If it's a high I person, right? Just compliment Jan for a great job in front of everyone. Jan, you did a great job on the presentation just now. Come on.
Thank you, Dan.
That's it.
Thank you. Yeah.
You got to stay for another 3 years.
Yes.
You don't need to give it a promotion. All right, I'll save that.
Retained.
Yeah.
Done.
So that's something about that. Yeah.
Well, it's a beautiful way to put it, right? Because money can only take you so far, right? And especially if you're looking at higher performers, there's a decreasing ROI just giving them more money, right? In that sense. And from what I'm hearing, from what you're saying, retaining talent, first of all, thinking about asking them about their why, making sure people are clear and connected to it, right? Why am I turning up? Why do I do this, right? What's my passion around this? And then there can also be an element of retaining and giving them other things, recognition. Maybe there's something where they want to go home a bit earlier, right? Work-life balance. Maybe you're working from home once or twice a week or whatever the rhythm is. There's a lot of opportunity there to be much more effective at retaining talent with just a little bit extra effort, right? A little bit, get more conversation, getting to know each other.
Totally.
What do you think then too, since, I think it's important to ask, some cheeky questions. What do you think of this life cycle of 2 years? Talent comes in, negotiates hard, does 2 years, and then jumps out again.
So is that the average right now?
That's my understanding. That's my understanding, right? People are coming in and out, and then they want to go into maybe 3 years, but then after 3 years, they're like, okay, it's time, because that's how you get your big salary increments.
So here's the thing about, first of all, tackle the tenure first, right? I have young people coming to ask me, Darren, I'm leaving my job in 1 year. Is that job hopping? I'm like, I don't know, during my time probably was about average of 3 years. So now I got to know it's 2 years. So yeah, I told the person, I think 1 year is too soon. Anyway, there's no world standard about this really. But I think at one point you won't be able to hop so much. But in the early careers, yes. Because job opportunities are like a pyramid. In the junior level, you have plenty of opportunities. By the time you reach a certain level, like maybe my stage mid-management, you don't have so many opportunities, right? It's not like, hey, I'm not going to pay you this figure just simply, right? Just because you hop here, hop there, right? You really need to have that solid ground. But of course, maybe another perspective to look at it, if you hop every 1-2 years and you have 30 over years of working experience, before you retire, what does that make you? You have 20 jobs? I don't know. I'm just saying, right? So those are some of the things to ponder. But about the jumping for the salary, so I was reading some research, again, this is in the West, right? That now they seems to be quite on par. A lot of organizations do reward people who stay longer compared to you keep jumping. So again, I guess there's no hard and fast rule on this.
Yes.
It's also I want to attribute this to, I'm just talking about Malaysia context. There's also another reason for this is that because standard of living, or rather family financial, has improved.
Yes.
If you think of the baby boomers, right? Post-war, Gen X, they grind and work so hard. So the Gen X means, my parents' generation, like they work so hard, like, no, I'm not going to let my kids suffer, right? Then they work so hard, they have so much money, right? And then we come to Gen Y, like, relax, my parents have money, right? And then come to Gen Z, they have even more money, like, oh man, I'm not throwing my ladder, I'm going home to Papa. Yeah, I got my Ferrari waiting for me anyway. I don't need this job. So, we used to, I need a job. I'm married with kids, so I still need to feed the family, pay the mortgage. But young people probably don't have that. That is just another way of looking at it.
It's a different reality, right?
Yeah. So switching job, maybe to them is okay.
So we talked about attracting talent. We talked about acquiring talent, developing talent, retaining talent, and now the big one that often people are a little bit afraid of, which is exiting talent.
Okay. So
to tell us first of all the frame, what does that mean, exiting talent? Because not everyone might be so familiar with this term.
So let's put it this way, right? So, let me just go back to the context, right? When you work, right? Imagine I work for Jan, right? So we are essentially enter into a relationship, right? A contract, right? To say I work for you to provide this service, right? And at the end of it, right? How do you end it, right? There are two ways. Number one, the drastic way, he fires me for whatsoever reason, right? Okay, let's not go over there, right? That's another topic for another day. But the other part is where I resign, right? I resign means, resign essentially means surrender, right? Okay, and I'm done. Thank you very much, or break up, right? So I'll write you a letter and say, okay, I'm gonna go. So so essentially, you gotta manage that part because, hey, who takes breakup easily, right? Or casually, right? I don't know. So you gotta manage that, right? Sometimes employees really want you to hear them when they resign because they have so much vengeance, right? So HR come in, become counselor, listen out.
Right.
So that's one part, exit interview. A lot of times we gather this, right? Which, we want to know so that we can help to improve. Maybe the same team has same attrition with the same manager. So it could be a people management problem. So if nobody hears them out and don't do anything, just, registration, okay, process, accept, okay, tomorrow's your last day, thank you very much, bye. Hey, we are not so transactional, right? We shouldn't be.
Well, okay, let me ask the ignorant question: why shouldn't we be? Why can't I just be that? What do you see as the damage that or what's lost there?
Okay, so there's this trend of rebounding employees, meaning to say they left your organization. A few years later, they work elsewhere. They come back, right? A few years later, I asked Jan for a job again because we had a great time. Just at that time, I so happened to better opportunity to go to, I don't know, Singapore maybe, right? But after I went to Singapore, I learned a lot of new skills. Now I become even better. But I still miss how Jan cared for me. I want to work for him. So I come and say, Jan, can you take me? So of course, I remember, Jan, do you remember what was the last thing you said to me when I left the door? You said, come back whenever you want. Here I am.
Come back whenever you want.
Yep.
Yes.
He gonna order his word, right? As a big boss. Yep, that's it. So make your boss say that.
And there's obviously a huge advantage there because you are able to, if that was the situation, I get to benefit from you having grown, learn, build your mindset, build your skill set, seeing you different things. You're familiar with what we do. We have a past relationship of trust we can reference.
Yep.
There's a lot of victories in that. Versus hiring someone new. Well, maybe I don't even have any position. But by you coming along, actually, there was that one thing in the back of my mind that you could be perfect for, right? And certainly, at scale as well.
Yep.
Right. This can be a really powerful strategy, right?
Mm-hmm. Agree. Yep. So the other thing I can encourage most HR practitioners or even bosses to do is to just thank the person, right? Whatever it is the person have contributed, however short or long, right? During they're given their time, the years, the months to the company. At least just thank them, at the end of the day. We really thank you for whatever you've done, right? Of course, even if they're not fantastic, please thank them, right? I mean, hey, who doesn't appreciate thank you, right? You want to thank you? Thank you, right? I mean, say it sincerely, of course, right? So yeah, that's the best way to end. People do remember the first thing you say to them as well as the last thing you say to them.
That's a good point. And there's a certain maturity in being able to find that ability to thank authentically.
Right.
To really be like, okay, tune your heart chakra. This is going to be tough, but I'm going to say thank you, right? And to mean it. And that can actually then, because it also allows us to see humans again, right? And we, when things are happening, you can get frustrated, you can get caught up. But in the end, my sister always says this to me, Jan, everyone's just trying their best. Right. In their way, that's just what they're capable, and that's what happened. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But there's an element sort of a bit related to that kind of idea when one says namaste, right? It's I see you.
Yep.
I see you as a you.
Yep.
Right.
So let me testify this, right? I mean, having worked for 16 years in HR, so I have seen people who I've interacted, exited in those days for whatsoever not very nice reason, whether performance or misconduct. Today they are very successful leaders. Do the people not deserve a second chance? They do. Doesn't mean once they were not there, they'll forever be there, right?
Well, that's a very profound point, isn't it? Right? Do people deserve a second chance? Do people learn and grow? Right? And isn't that essential about what the human experience is all about?
Right.
And it's all too easy in the burden and blur of the HR reality where you have so many responsibilities, juggling different things to kind of become dehumanized, right? And to then forget why you got into that field in the first place. Because most people get into HR because they care about people. And they care about people shining and doing well and being great.
Right.
And so being able to do that well is maybe a way of checking in with yourself, saying, hey, I'm still human. I'm still here. I can still say thank you sincerely. I can still appreciate someone as a human being, and therefore just remind yourself that you're human. We're all human.
Yeah, thanks for the reminder. I think we need that sometimes,
Well, the more we digitalize, the more we must humanize.
Right.
I mean, which takes us into maybe, we're coming towards the end. You've shared so much with us. We've learned from you about the importance of bringing data into HR. I think an important point you made was that intuition is also important. I don't think you're speaking against intuition.
Right.
But you're saying marry it with data. So maybe that's even more powerful. We've looked at the HR lifecycle, attracting talent, acquiring talent, developing talent, retaining talent, and then exiting it with an eye towards rebounding the talent, bringing it back in. As we look forward into this age of AI, it's the 2025 now. I'd like to invite you to cast your eyes into the future and share with us anything you'd like to about talent and HR. What do you think you would just like to share out as something that you think is important or watch out for, tips and tricks, whatever you want to share. Free blanket, free canvas, not free blanket, free canvas.
So to those who are not in HR, right, whether you are a boss, a people manager, or just any employee, know that HR is not just people pushers. We are not just hire and fire, right? If you have watched until this point, you will know that there is a life cycle just on talent alone, right? Even before you recruit, there's attraction, right? And exiting is not just resign, but we're going to manage it properly. So HR today requires a lot more skills, a lot more effort than those days. Honestly, letters are churned out by system today's, filings are going online. We don't do so much of those paper things anymore, right? So things have changed. We are there to connect, make sense. We are there to be human, like Jan said. So that's to the non-HR. To the HRs, I encourage you to continue to learn. I think, everyone is afraid of AI, but I suppose our job can be better with AI, right? It helps us, right? I mean, I just give you a simple example, right? I mean, if I were to translate an English letter to a Bahasa, a Malay letter for governmental agency purpose, I can use ChatGPT quite quickly, right? I mean, change it around and then I just check it through. Rather than I do it all myself, it take an hour, right? So yeah, why refuse it? I mean, it's not so much about cheating. It's a tool to help. So I think we need to reframe that. There are people who are really against it. We understand. I mean, anything new, people have this fight and flight, right? So they either embrace it or run away. So yeah, so that is what my encouragement to you. If you're a recruiter, right, think of how creative way to attract talent. There are a lot of people doing that. Of course, a lot of time the younger ones, right, on the TikTok and whatnot. So those are some of the creative ways, because you need to know your audience then again, right? If you're attracting senior people, they'll likely be on LinkedIn. But if you're going to attract different group of people, maybe they're on Instagram. So you're just going to plan. So HR is not just straightforward. Of course, you have the challenge of people changing job quite frequently, but we have just shared with you how to retain people. So if you use some of the tips that we have shared, I hope you do well.
Darren, thank you so much. This has been illuminating for me. I think also going forward, one of the things that stands out to me in this age of AI and this age of technology is that talent and culture become more important than ever before, because those are the real differentiators. Everyone can have a somewhat equivalent LLM, AI, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. We all have somewhat similar business models. The real source of sustained competitive advantage, from my perspective, is talent and culture. Mm-hmm. And HR professionals, L&D professionals, all these professionals in the human and culture space are critical, not just for the success of the business today, but critical for the success of the business tomorrow. And that's really what you've kind of, from my perspective, helped me understand more clearly with introducing the point about data, introducing your HR lifecycle here, the structure. Mm-hmm. And I hope that's given a lot of food for thought for people as we go forward in the age of AI. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you so much, Jan, for having me.
And that brings us to the end of the podcast. And goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.